Hey guys, what's up and welcome back. So this is section 3 where we're going to be implementing our first neural network. The previous example was really just kind of matrix vector multiplication. So in this section what we're going to be taking a look at is we're basically going to be classifying text, whether we think it's going to be a positive review or a negative review. And this is from a movie dataset which we can download online. We're then going to be looking at the TensorFlow DNN classifier, which is basically an inbuilt classifier where all of the hidden nodes and layers are set up beforehand. So it's super easy. You just call the classifier, you specify your hidden nodes and your hidden layers, and then off you go. You just train it. It's really simple, really easy to use. And then, as you can see, we'll be training it and then we'll be evaluating it. So first video is loading the dataset. So if you can go to your IDE, just like so, and then if you make sure that you've got all this information, so we're using an example off the TensorFlow website, so you need to have this license, but it doesn't really inhibit you from doing anything as long as you include it. And what you'll need to do is you'll also need to install TensorFlow Hub, Pandas, and Seaborn. You should already have NumPy and Matplotlib from the previous example. But yeah, so if you just make sure you've got all of those and you should be good to go. So as always with the first video, we're going to be creating a data set and a load data set. So this is going to be our main function that we're going to call from the main program to load the data set. So here we've given it a name and we've got per argument we pass whether we force download it or not. So as you can see, we have dataset. Keras is a backend of TensorFlow. Well, Keras is kind of a separate neural network module or library that you can use, and it effectively is the backend as opposed to the front end. So what this does is it gets a file, so you have the file name and you specify a path. In this case, it comes from Stanford EDU, and it basically downloads this movie dataset that's got thousands of reviews and specifies whether it's a positive review or a negative review. So this is kind of a bit like natural language processing, where we, as opposed to images, which sometimes we like to use with TensorFlow, we're now going to be looking at text. So all this does is it downloads the dataset and puts it into a directory. So this is now directory name. So then what we will need to do is we then need to extract the data from this file structure. So this is just a zip file containing files with the train test, the test set, whether it's positive or negative, etc., etc. And then we somehow need to extract the information so we can use it in our TensorFlow example. So what we're going to do is we're going to need some sort of function called load dataset, and this is just going to loop through all of our files for this path, wherever we specify this path. So this is the dataset name and then the train set. So firstly, we now need to implement this load dataset, and we can do that just like so. So here we are, we've now got our load dataset, and we specify the directory that we want to load. So you have a positive data frame. It's going to be a pandas data frame, which we're going to look at in a minute. But you can just think of that kind of like a dictionary where you can index rows and columns with certain names as opposed to having numerical indices. So you get a positive data frame. So this is going to be all the positive examples because we do binary classification. We're then going to have all the negative examples because we also need to do account for the ones that is negative. And simply we're just going to put in or specify the directory and the positive set and the negative set. So there you go. And now we're just saying that the polarity of this pandas data frame equals 1. So we're specifying that positive data frame has a polarity of 1, so it's positive, and the negative data frame's polarity index is 0. And then what we're going to do is we're going to return a concatenated version of the positive data frame and the negative data frame, and we're basically going to do a bunch of stuff to it, that we sample all of it and we reset the index. So basically all this function is going to do, this load data set, is return a pandas data frame with a load of information. So it's going to have a load of text, and we're going to specify that it's the polarity is 1 and the polarity is 0, depending on which one we've extracted, as we can by specifying the folder. Yeah, all very good. Slightly confusing so far, but it's okay. So now we need this load directory data function, which we can, I'll just show you how to implement it. So here we are, this is the load directory data. And so this is going to be passed as an argument, the directory of either the train or test set and the positive or negative examples. Okay, so we're going to set up a dictionary called data, and we're going to put have the sentence argument to be, well, the sentence index to be an empty array or an empty list, and the sentiment to be an empty list as well. And then basically what we do is we're going to loop through all of the files in the directory. So these is just a bunch of text files. We're going to open the file, so path join, we're going to the directory and the file path, and you're going to read it as F, so that's just kind of setting some object that we can now use to read. And basically, so for the sentence index, we're going to append the text. We're going to append everything that's in the text file, and then we're also going to append the sentiment with this function here, which basically just matches it with these certain conditions and specify the file path. Good, and then we're going to return, we need to return a pandas data frame, but currently data is a dictionary object. So all we do is then we call this function, which converts the data to a pandas data frame. So that's pretty much everything for loading the data. It is slightly complicated, and I hope you can see why I kind of just talked you through it. So I do hope you understand. But let's just go through it all over again. So firstly, we download the data. And basically what this does is a file object or a folder. So Keras get file downloads this table and then extracts it, well, like we specify here. So then we've got some directory where we know the data is. We then call load dataset for the training set. And what we do is we load a pandas data frame for the positive data in the folder and also for the negative data in the folder, and then we set the labels, the ground truth labels here, which basically says it's a positive review or a negative review, effectively, and then we concatenate them together. This function here, load directory data, you probably don't need to know too much about, but basically all it does is kind of does the heavy lifting where you loop through every file and then append the correct information to a dictionary, and then we convert it to a pandas data frame. And then similarly, we do the same for test data frame.